Welcome to the debate. Today we are tackling a subject that governs, well, every single day of our lives, yet it remains one of the most contentious topics out there: what we eat. Specifically, we're looking at the tension between the pragmatic, standardized nutritional guidelines we all know, the food pyramids, calorie counting, low-fat recommendations, and the immense biological complexity of how our bodies actually utilize nutrients.
It is a massive topic, and frankly, it's where the roadmap often fails the territory. We're sold this version of nutrition that treats the human body like, I don't know, a simple bank account, calories in, calories out, when in reality, we're a complex chemical processing plant. The question we're asking today is this: is optimal health achieved by strictly following standard government guidelines, or does that whole approach actually obscure the nuance of true nourishment?
And to ground this discussion, we are pulling our facts and our framework from Complete Family Nutrition by Jane Clark. I'll be taking the position that we really need a structured, accessible approach to food, one that emphasizes energy balance, clear categories, and, practical safety nets to prevent deficiency.
And I'll be arguing that those safety nets often become traps. My case is that the standard guidelines are frequently reductive, that the low-fat industry has done more harm than good, and that we need to prioritize the complexity of whole foods over the convenience of fortified refinements.
All right, let's get into it. So when you look at the human body from a purely functional perspective, it's essentially an engine. It requires specific inputs to produce specific outputs. We need carbohydrates for energy, proteins for repair, and fats for insulation and temperature regulation. The fundamental principle that governs weight, which is a primary health indicator, is the energy balance equation. If you consume more energy than you burn, it's stored as fat. Less, you burn fat. It's thermodynamics.
That is the standard line, yes. But I have to stop you at thermodynamics. While that's technically true in a physics lab, it's a disastrous way to view human biology.
Why? It works? I mean, the text makes it clear. To stay at the same weight, the energy you take in must equal the energy used.
Because the engine analogy implies all fuel is created equal, as long as the calorie count matches. It suggests that 100 calories of soda is processed the same way as 100 calories of almonds, and we know that's not true. The soda spikes your insulin, the storage hormone, telling your body to hang on to fat. The almonds trigger satiety hormones and metabolic processes. Calories in, calories out completely ignores the quality of the fuel and the chemical response it triggers.
But we have to look at accessibility. The USDA guidelines, Choose My Plate, all the food groups outlined in our source material, they provide a digestible way for families to navigate this. If we start talking about hormonal signaling to a busy parent trying to get dinner on the table, we lose them. We have to be realistic. Canned and frozen vegetables are just as nutritious as fresh. Fortified white bread is a necessary innovation for people who can't digest bulk. Low-fat dairy is a crucial tool to get calcium without clogging arteries. My argument is that we have to meet people where they are, with achievable goals rather than paralyzing them with complexity.
I see why you think that, but let me give you a different perspective. Meeting people where they are often means leaving them in a state of, chronic inflammation. When we prioritize convenience and low-fat labeling, we often sacrifice the very nutrients we're trying to get. You mentioned fortified white bread as a necessary innovation. I'd argue it's a nutritional subtraction.
Subtraction? It's fortified. It has the vitamins added back in?
Exactly, added back in because we stripped them out in the first place. When you process wheat into white flour, you remove the bran and the germ. That is where the insoluble fiber lives. That fiber is like a broom for your digestive tract. It keeps things moving. When you remove it, you get a product that just hits the bloodstream as pure sugar. Spraying some synthetic vitamins on top doesn't recreate the complexity of the original grain.
I want to drill down on that, specifically on carbohydrates. This is often the first battlefield in nutrition. The source material is very clear. Carbohydrates are the basis of a healthy diet. They should make up, 45 to 65% of our daily calories. They are the fuel that puts a spring in your step.
But carbohydrates is such a broad term. It just lumps a bowl of lentils together with a bowl of sugary cereal.
Granted, but let's look at the nuance the text actually provides. There's this tendency to demonize anything that isn't a whole grain. But Jane Clark explicitly notes that for children under 4 and the elderly, too many whole grains can actually be detrimental.
Detrimental? How so?
It's a matter of volume versus density. A toddler's stomach is tiny. If you fill it with bulky, high-fiber brown rice and whole wheat pasta, they physically get full before they've consumed enough calories to fuel their rapid growth. So they feel satiated, but they're underfueled. In those specific cases, refined, fortified white bread isn't just okay, it is actually medically better. It provides the energy without that digestive burden.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that as a general defense of white bread. We're talking about edge cases, toddlers and the very elderly. For the vast majority of the population, the adults listening to this, refining grain is a net loss. We are not struggling with not getting enough calories. We're struggling with getting too many calories with zero nutritional payload.
But the fortification matters. You're dismissing the calcium, iron, and B vitamins that are added. For families on a budget, that fortified loaf is a lifeline.
It's a Band-Aid. Relying on it is just a poor substitute for the natural nutritional profile of things like rye or millet or quinoa. Those grains have a complex matrix of minerals and fiber that release energy slowly. White bread gives you a spike and then a crash.
Quinoa and millet are wonderful, I agree, but they aren't always accessible, and frankly, a lot of kids won't eat them.
Then let's talk about oats. Cheap, accessible, and full of soluble fiber that actively lowers cholesterol. You just don't get that kind of biological service from a slice of white toast, no matter how much iron you spray onto it.
I think we can agree on the value of fiber for adults, but I maintain that for energy delivery, specifically glucose for the brain and body, carbohydrates are non-negotiable. Let's move to where the disagreement might be sharper, though. Fats.
The most misunderstood macronutrient.
Perhaps, but the dangers are well documented. Saturated fats, found mainly in animal products, coconut, palm oil. They clog arteries. They raise bad cholesterol, or LDL. This is a direct line to heart disease. The source material is explicit here. We have to moderate our intake. And this is why I advocate for the low-fat swaps.
The low-fat swap is one of the greatest marketing tricks of the last 40 years.
It's not marketing, it's math. Fat has 9 calories per gram. Protein and carbs have 4. If you're an adult, you need calcium from dairy, but you don't need the saturated fat that comes with whole milk or cheddar. Switching to low-fat milk, yogurt, and cheese lets you hit those 3 daily servings of dairy without spiking your risk of a heart attack. It is a simple reduction of risk.
I come at it from a different way. You're focusing on what you're taking out. I'm looking at what they're putting in. When you take the fat out of a product like yogurt or a salad dressing, you remove the flavor and the texture. So what do manufacturers do? The text admits this. They pump it full of sugar, thickeners, and salt to make it palatable.
So you read the label, you choose the low-fat option that doesn't have the added sugar.
It's harder than you think, but more importantly, we need fats to absorb vitamins. This is a mechanism people often forget. Vitamins A, D, E, and K are fat-soluble. Think of fat as the bus that drives these vitamins into your bloodstream. If you eat a salad full of leafy greens, rich in vitamin K, but you use a fat-free dressing, you are essentially leaving those vitamins stranded in your gut. They just slide right through you.
But we aren't suggesting a no-fat diet. We're suggesting a reduction in saturated fats. The text highlights polyunsaturated and monounsaturated fats, the omega-3s and 6s found in oily fish like mackerel or in nuts and seeds. We want people to eat those.
I agree on the omegas. But even there, the low-fat mindset damages us. It trains people to fear satiety. Fat triggers the release of hormones that tell your brain, stop eating, I'm full. When you eat these low-fat, high-sugar alternatives, you don't get that signal. You might eat a whole tub of low-fat yogurt and still feel hungry, whereas a small amount of full-fat cheese would have satisfied you.
That requires a level of self-control eating a small amount that's difficult for many. Low-fat offers a volume advantage. You can eat more food for the same amount of calories. For people struggling with hunger pangs on a diet, that volume is a legitimate strategy.
It's a strategy that often leads to a sugar addiction. But let's look at the produce aisle. I suspect we'll find some common ground there, though I have issues with the standard benchmarks.
You mean the 5-a-day rule?
I stand by it. It is a benchmark that is easy to remember and effective.
It is a benchmark of mediocrity.
It is a benchmark of sufficiency. And more importantly, the source material supports the idea that we shouldn't be snobs about how we get them. Canned and frozen vegetables are excellent sources.
You really think canned vegetables hold up to fresh?
Absolutely. Think about the supply chain. Fresh spinach might be picked, sit on a truck for 3 days, then sit on a shelf for 3 more days. By the time you eat it, the nutrient levels have plummeted. Commercial freezing happens within hours of picking. It locks in the nutrients. A bowl of frozen peas can actually have more vitamins than fresh peas that are a week old.
Okay, that's a compelling argument. Regarding freezing, I'll give you that. But canning? That involves high heat.
Which isn't always bad. Cooking actually improves the bioavailability of some nutrients.
Go on.
Okay, take tomatoes. They contain lycopene, a powerful antioxidant linked to heart and prostate health. But in a raw tomato, the lycopene is trapped inside the plant's cell walls. When you cook tomatoes, roast them, can them, even turn them into ketchup, the heat breaks down those cell walls. The lycopene becomes easily absorbable. So in that specific case, the processed version is actually superior to the raw one.
Fair enough on the lycopene, but you have to weigh that against what you lose. Vitamin C is extremely sensitive to heat, so if you rely on canned vegetables, you might get your lycopene, but you're boiling away your vitamin C and folate. But my bigger issue isn't the processing, it's the target itself. 5 a day is pitifully low.
It's a starting point.
It encourages people to stop way too soon. The text highlights this international discrepancy. France recommends 10 portions. Japan recommends 13 portions of vegetables plus 4 of fruit. That is 17 portions of plants a day.
17 portions? That's not a guideline, that's a full-time job.
It's a lifestyle.
It's a lifestyle that requires a stay-at-home chef or a culture completely oriented around fresh markets. If you tell a working American parent they need to prep 17 servings of plants, they will just give up. 5 a day is achievable. It's a win we can actually get.
But 5 a day ignores the complexity of the rainbow. The text talks about the chemistry of color. It's not just about counting to 5, it's about covering the spectrum.
You mean eating different colors for different nutrients?
Exactly. Red foods have lycopene. Purple and blue foods, like blackberries and eggplants, have anthocyanins, which protect the brain and heart. Greens have glucosinolates. If you eat 5 portions of just corn and bananas, which 5 a day technically allows, you are missing the entire pharmaceutical capability of the plant kingdom. The complexity of the rainbow concept trumps the simplicity of just counting servings.
I don't disagree with the rainbow, but I prioritize ensuring people get any vegetable first. And speaking of getting essentials, let's talk about the hardest mineral to secure, calcium.
Ah, the dairy mandate?
It's a mandate for a reason. This is a critical mineral, 1,000 milligrams a day for adults, even more for teenagers. And the text is unambiguous. Dairy is the most efficient delivery system. Milk, cheese, yogurt. It provides calcium that is easily absorbed.
Easily absorbed is the key phrase there. And it's where the standard advice often glosses over the biology. You'll hear, drink milk. But if you look at plant sources, it gets complicated. Spinach has calcium, yes.
Plenty of it.
But, as the text notes, it also contains oxalic acid. This is an anti-nutrient.
Explain that for our listeners.
Oxalic acid binds to calcium. It essentially handcuffs the calcium molecule. So you eat the spinach, but the calcium is locked up. It can't get into your bloodstream. You could eat a bucket of spinach and still be calcium deficient if you're relying on it as your sole source.
Which is exactly why I recommend dairy. It's reliable. You don't have to worry about oxalic acid blocking your intake from a glass of milk. It's a safe bet for bone health.
But what if you don't do dairy? The text mentions almond, rice, and oat milks. They're often fortified with calcium, but, and this is crucial, it's not as easily absorbed as the calcium in cow's milk. Just because the label says calcium doesn't mean your body can access it.
Precisely. That supports my pragmatic stance. If the plant alternatives are less reliable, the guidelines should be dairy.
Or the guideline should be to understand the mineral matrix. We need magnesium and phosphorus to actually use the calcium. Think of magnesium as the foreman on the construction site. Calcium is the bricks. If you have all the bricks, but no foreman, you don't build a wall,
You just have a pile of bricks clogging up the site, or in this case, calcifying your arteries.
And where do we get this formin?
Nuts, seeds like pumpkin and sunflower, whole grains. If you were just chugging milk but ignoring the nuts and seeds, you aren't building the bone health you think you are. It's the combination that matters, not just isolating a single nutrient.
I think we're seeing the pattern here. I look for the reliable source, dairy, while you are looking for the metabolic synergy. But let's look at one more area where these views clash: the role of friendly bacteria. The text discusses probiotics.
This is one of my favorite sections. It illustrates perfectly why whole foods win. You can't just take a pill. You need probiotics, the good bacteria in yogurt and sauerkraut, but you also need prebiotics.
Which are essentially the fuel for the bacteria.
Right. Prebiotics are fibers found in things like tomatoes, bananas, onions, leeks. They feed the good bacteria. This is a complex ecosystem in your gut. If you're eating a sterile, highly processed diet, even if it meets the calorie and macro guidelines, you might be starving your gut flora.
Though, to be fair, the text also suggests that for some people, introducing too many of these initially can cause bloating and gas. It's not a magic bullet. It requires adjustment.
A small price to pay for a functioning immune system.
This brings us to a natural closing point. We have covered the fuel, the fats, the plants, the minerals. When I look at the source material, Complete Family Nutrition, I see a manual for survival in a busy world. While nuance is intellectually satisfying, guidelines exist to prevent deficiency. The approach I advocate for provides a safety net. It ensures we get enough carbohydrates for energy, sufficient calcium for bones, and that we limit the saturated fats we know damage the heart. It's about balance, portion control, and using modern conveniences to keep us healthy.
And when I read the same text, I see a warning against settling. Balance shouldn't mean compromise. My takeaway is that we need to read the label with a skeptical eye. Watch out for the sugar in those low-fat yogurts. Aim for Japan's 13 portions. Don't settle for the US's 5. Prioritize the chemical complexity of the food, the phytonutrients, the fiber, the rainbow over simple calorie counting. The body is not an engine. It's a garden that needs diverse inputs to thrive.
I think there's one thing we can both agree on from the text, though. Nutrition isn't static. It changes with age. Toddlers need fat for their brains. The elderly need less bulk to get their nutrients.
Absolutely. And there's one other vital nutrient we haven't mentioned, which the author highlights in her foreword: the social aspect.
Yes, the sense of nurturing. Preparing food to be shared at a dinner table isn't just about calories or phytonutrients. It's about expressing care and creating security.
That might be the most important ingredient of all. Stress disturbs digestion, while warmth and connection aid it. On that, we are in total agreement.
Thank you for listening to the debate. We hope this discussion has illuminated the different ways to interpret the food on your plate.
Dig into the source material, check the labels, and decide for yourself what your body really needs.
Until next time.